Ethan Parker dragged his feet along the snow-covered sidewalk. His breath misting in the chilly air, he pulled his coat tighter around him, trying to stave off the cold that seeped into his bones. He had no destination in mind, no plan for where he was going or what he was doing. It had been a week since he was expelled from the prestigious prep school he had attended for the past 2 years. Ethan had always been a good student, but he had made some poor choices that led to his dismissal. He had been caught smoking in the dorms, and when confronted by the headmaster, he had responded with a string of profanities. Now he was wandering the streets of New York City, trying to avoid the inevitable confrontation with his parents. He knew they would be disappointed, angry even, and he wasn't ready to face their judgment. Ethan passed by a group of teenagers, all bundled up in scarves and hats, laughing and joking with each other. He felt a pang of jealousy as he compared himself to them. They seemed carefree and happy, while he felt burdened by the weight of his mistakes. He continued on his aimless wanderings, passing by storefronts and restaurants. Lost in his own thoughts, he felt a sense of emptiness, as if he was adrift in the world without a purpose or a direction. Finally, he stopped at a street corner and looked up at the sky. It was a pale gray, heavy with the threat of snow. Ethan realized that he had been walking for hours, with no idea of where he was or how to get back to his parents' apartment. He dug into his pocket for his phone, but realized that the battery was dead. He sighed and shook his head, feeling the weight of his own irresponsibility. With a heavy heart, he began to make his way back home, dreading the confrontation that awaited him. Ethan trudged through the snow, his feet heavy and his mind weighed down by the thought of his upcoming confrontation with his parents. He felt lost and alone in the bustling city, surrounded by people yet invisible to them. As he walked, he spotted a familiar face. It was one of his former classmates from the prep school, James. James was a popular kid, with a chiseled jawline and bright blue eyes that sparkled with confidence. "Hey man, long time no see," James said, clapping Ethan on the back. Ethan felt a knot form in his stomach. He hadn't seen James since he was expelled, and he felt ashamed and embarrassed to be seen by someone who he had once considered a friend. They chatted for a few minutes, but Ethan found himself feeling increasingly jealous of James. James had everything that Ethan had lost: popularity, confidence, and a future full of promise. As they said goodbye, James handed Ethan a business card. "Hey, if you're looking for a job, give me a call. My dad's company is always looking for interns," he said with a smile. Ethan took the card, feeling a mix of gratitude and bitterness. He knew that he needed a job, but the thought of working for James' dad, a wealthy businessman who Ethan knew looked down on people like him, made him feel uneasy. As he walked away, Ethan couldn't help but feel that his life was spiraling out of control. He had lost his place in the prep school, and now, it seemed, he had lost his place in the world. Feeling dejected, Ethan continued his aimless wandering. As he walked past a dark alleyway, he heard a woman's voice call out to him, "Hey there, handsome, looking for some company?" Ethan turned to see a woman, dressed in a tight dress and high heels, leaning against the brick wall. He felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment. He had never been approached by a prostitute before. "No, I'm good," he muttered, quickly walking away. As he left the alleyway behind, Ethan felt a sense of relief mixed with guilt. He knew that he had made the right choice, but he also knew that he was teetering on the edge of something dangerous. Ethan woke up the next morning, feeling anxious about the upcoming visit with his parents. He decided to take a walk in Central Park to clear his head. As he strolled through the park, he saw children playing and laughing. Watching them, he couldn't help but think of his little sister, Phoebe. They had always been close, and he missed her terribly. He decided to pay her a visit. He knew that his parents would be furious if they found out, but he couldn't resist the urge to see her. Ethan arrived at the elementary school and waited outside for Phoebe's class to let out. When the bell rang, he watched as the students streamed out of the building, laughing and chattering. He spotted Phoebe, her blonde hair bouncing as she ran towards him. "Ethan," she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. Ethan hugged her back tightly, feeling a wave of emotion wash over him. He had missed her more than he had realized. They walked through the park together, catching up on each other's lives. Phoebe told him about her schoolwork and her friends, and Ethan told her about his experiences in the city. As they talked, Ethan realized how much he admired his little sister. She was still innocent and carefree, unburdened by the weight of the adult world. He thought back to his obsession with being a catcher in the rye. The idea of protecting children from falling off the cliff of innocence suddenly seemed futile. He knew now that it was impossible to shield anyone from growing up and facing the challenges of adulthood. Phoebe's innocence reminded him of the person he used to be before he became disillusioned and lost. As they parted ways, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that he couldn't change the world, but he could start by changing himself. Ethan returned to his apartment, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He sat down at his desk and began to write in his journal. As he wrote, he found himself reflecting on his past and the events that had led him to where he was now. He wrote about his feelings of alienation and his struggles with depression, and he found himself writing about his brother Ali for the first time in years. He wrote about how much he had loved Ali and how much he had struggled to come to terms with his death. He wrote about the guilt he felt for not being there when Ali died, and the anger he felt towards his parents for not understanding his pain. As he wrote, Ethan began to cry. It was the first time he had allowed himself to truly feel his emotions in a long time. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Ethan wiped away his tears and opened it to find his parents standing in the hallway. His mother's eyes were red and swollen, and his father looked like he hadn't slept in days. They walked into the apartment without saying a word and sat down on the couch. "Ethan," his mother said, her voice trembling, "we need to talk." Ethan felt his heart began to race. He knew that this conversation was long overdue. His parents told him that they knew he had been expelled from school and that they were disappointed in him. They told him that they were worried about his future and that they wanted him to come home and get his life back on track. But Ethan couldn't keep his feelings bottled up any longer. He told them about his struggles with depression and his feelings of alienation. He told them about his obsession with being a catcher in the rye, and how he had come to realize the futility of trying to protect others from growing up. And then he told them about Ellie. He told them about how much he had loved his brother, and how much he had struggled to come to terms with his death. His parents listened in silence, their faces softening as Ethan spoke. When he finished, they hugged him tightly, tears streaming down their faces. "I'm sorry we didn't understand," his mother said. "We're here for you now, Ethan. We'll help you through this." Ethan felt a weight lifted off his shoulders. For the first time in years, he felt like he wasn't alone. After his emotional conversation with his parents, Ethan knew that he couldn't go back to his old life. He needed a fresh start, somewhere he could rebuild his life and find a sense of purpose. He began to research different schools and programs, looking for something that would challenge him and help him grow. Eventually, he stumbled upon a wilderness therapy program that seemed like it might be a good fit. The program involved spending several months in the wilderness, learning survival skills, and working with a team of therapists and other participants to overcome personal challenges. Ethan was nervous about the prospect of spending so much time in the wilderness, but he knew that he needed something drastic to shake him out of his rut. He applied for the program and was accepted a few weeks later. He packed his bags and said goodbye to his parents, feeling a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The first few weeks of the program were tough. Ethan struggled to adjust to the physical demands of living in the wilderness and to connect with the other participants. But as time went on, he began to find his groove. He discovered a talent for wilderness survival and became a valuable member of the team. He also began to open up to the therapists and other participants, sharing his struggles and his hopes for the future. As the program drew to a close, Ethan felt like a new person. He had gained a sense of confidence and purpose that he hadn't felt in years, and he knew that he was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. When he returned home, he decided to enroll in a community college and study outdoor education. He wanted to help others discover the same sense of connection and purpose that he had found in the wilderness. It wasn't always easy, but Ethan persisted. He worked hard in school and volunteered with local outdoor organizations, and over time, he began to build a life that felt meaningful and fulfilling. Looking back on his journey, Ethan knew that it had been a difficult and painful path, but he was grateful for the lessons he had learned and the person he had become. He felt like he was finally living his own life on his own terms. As Ethan settled into his new life, he found himself feeling more confident and outgoing than he had in years. He made new friends, took on leadership roles in his classes, and spent as much time as he could exploring the outdoors. One day, as he was hiking through a nearby nature preserve, he came across a young woman who'd sprained her ankle. She was sitting on a rock, grimacing in pain. Ethan approached her cautiously, not wanting to startle her. "Are you okay?" he asked. The woman looked up at him with a mix of relief and embarrassment. "I think I sprained my ankle," she said. "I'm supposed to meet some friends for lunch, but I don't think I can make it now." Ethan knelt down beside her and examined her ankle. "It's definitely swollen," he said. You shouldn't try to walk on it. Do you have anyone you can call? The woman shook her head. I just moved here a few weeks ago. She said, I don't really know anyone yet. Ethan thought for a moment. Well, I can help you back to your car, he said, and I can give you a ride home if you need it. The woman looked up at him, her eyes wide with surprise. Really? She said. Ethan nodded. Yeah. It's not safe for you to hike back on that ankle, and it's no trouble for me to give you a lift. The woman smiled gratefully. Thank you, she said. Ethan helped her to her feet and supported her as she hobbled back to her car. Along the way, they chatted about their mutual love of the outdoors and their shared experiences in the area. By the time they reached her car, Ethan felt like he had made a new friend. Do you need me to drive you home? He asked. The woman shook her head. No, I'm okay, she said. But thank you so much for your help. I really appreciate it. Ethan smiled. No problem, he said. Take care of that ankle. Okay. As he watched her drive away, Ethan felt a surge of warmth in his chest. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt so good about helping someone, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter was the beginning of something important.